Travis Winggood, so let's take advantage of the cold weather to keep me from using a fan. Before I do the video about it's not Jesus Christ's birthday for Mormons, it's necessary to remind you of the basics. We're going back to the beginning, we're going back to the origins, we're going back to the 80s. It's actually a good song by Aqua. Joseph Smith history. It's 1838, and already there's confusion about the origin of the church and the Book of Mormon. And so Joseph Smith tells us specifically, I'm here to correct the record. And so he talks about Christian breakoffs. That's who the Methodists, Baptists, and Presbyterians are. They're products of the Reformation, Protestant Reformation. As previous to that, the Orthodoxies broke off from each other. And the origin of Christianity, Constantine. At the Council of Nicaea, 325 CE. The reason why that's the origin of Christianity is because prior to that, you had all these different congregations with different Christs, with different apocalyptic scripture, with their particular Christ as their messianic hero. And whenever anybody in their ward, because bishops were in charge of it, would disagree with the bishop would merely excommunicate them. And he would denounce and excommunicate those who weren't even of his congregation, condemning other bishops for being false. And likewise in return. There was great confusion, great strife among all the different parties of religionists. History repeating itself, huh? And so Constantine rounded them all up because the Roman Empire had been failing for 300 years to genocidally exterminate those messianic Christians. You cannot claim that they're Constantine Christians because they're before Constantine. So when Origen, however he wants to be pronounced, comes out and says Christian, he's not referring to Trinity Jesus. He's before Constantine. Constantine created Jesus, created Christianity, turned the apocalyptic literature, which the Book of Revelation is apocalyptic literature, turned all of that into history. They were now historical documents. And so this is why archaeologists cannot confirm historical accuracy of Old or New Testament stuff. I saw a news clip this morning before my run saying proof that the Bible is true, showing Noah's Ark. Nope, not true. All of that are looking beyond the mark. You're missing the message of the Bible. And likewise, Joseph Smith is saying Mormons are looking beyond the mark of the Book of Mormon. And so, he talks about the passage in James And here we have in verse 16, I saw a pillar of light exactly over my head above the brightness of the sun. When is the sun the brightest? At noonday. I saw two personages standing above me in the air, being compared to the sun at noonday. And so, yes, they quote the Jesus character from the gospel stories that have been turned into history as Jesus has been turned into a real boy. He says this. And here Joseph Smith is saying this. But he doesn't say Jesus anywhere here. My object in going was to know if Christianity was right and which one to join. And so he was told, none of them. All Christianity is wrong. Why? Because their creeds are an abomination. And so, yes, Constantine creating Jesus, making him history, conquering all those different congregations and uniting them under him, was the formation of the great and abominable church, with Constantine as the false Christ, establishing an idol god who he named Jesus. Abomination in his sight. You all have this. This is not new doctrine for you. You go on missions talking about this. Many of us were forced to memorize it, and some of us refused to strive for the mastery, scripture mastery. I don't memorize. I use associative memory. And so, when you go into the Book of Mormon, it's got Jesus. It quotes from the Gospels, Sermon on the Mount. Jesus comes to America, says, I am Jesus. Even in 2 Nephi chapter 25, he declares that his birthday year is 4 CE. And his name is Jesus, according to the words of Isaiah. Are you sure? What are you doing? You quote Isaiah earlier in chapter 17 of 2 Nephi, and then in chapter 25 of 2 Nephi, you then say that Isaiah called him Jesus? What is Emmanuel mean as a baby name? Oh, it's God with us, because that's what Matthew says. Yeah, why does Joseph Smith refer to our Christ as son Amen? Adam Ondai Amen? Amen, Amen, Amen? To avoid the too frequent name of the repetition of the name of who? We call it the Melchizedek priesthood. We'll get to 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2, learning of the Jews' language of the Egyptians. Amen, the sun god at noonday. Oops, I just did it. Spoiler alert. And so then we have Nephi appearing to Joseph Smith. Yes, Nephi. That's who Joseph Smith called him. Are you not referring to the Joseph Smith papers? And he talks about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. Egyptian gold plates. Do not look beyond the mark. And he talks about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon in the context of Old Testament apocalyptic literature. Day that shall burn as an oven. Isaiah. Acts. Acts is in the New Testament, Travis. Yes, that's the one anomaly. When you're doing research, you look for the patterns, and then you identify anomalies and explain them. Did you even go to these passages? They provide footnotes for you to go to them. Did you even bother? So why is he quoting Acts? Well, he tells us why he quotes Acts. Because Nephi quotes it precisely as they stand in our New Testament. And he says that prophet was Christ. But the day had not yet come when they who would not hear his voice should be cut off from among the people. Did you go to Acts? Did you check for the word cut off? You couldn't find it? What is in its place? So what is the purpose of the Book of Mormon? It's for the latter days. For the destruction that's coming. For the latter days. This is nothing new. This isn't some new strange doctrine I'm creating off the top of my head. All of you have this. All of you know this. You just think it's Moroni. Because you don't bother to trust Joseph Smith from the Joseph Smith papers. You look beyond the mark. And so let's go to the Book of Mormon. Yea, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews. What's the learning of the Jews? Look it up in the manual. Oh, nothing there, huh? They focus on language of the Egyptians. Well, in the language of the Egyptians, who's the sun god at noonday? Oh, Amun. Well, that's strange. That's what Joseph Smith says. Amun El of Emmanuel of Isaiah. Huh. That's strange. So why then Jesus? Because the gospel narratives are not narratives, they're apocalyptic stories using the character name Jesus. Just like the Old Testament. We've gone over for the Sunday school lessons. The book of Genesis. They were not all one book. They were all separate books. So the book of Genesis is about the Christ named Joseph. That's the finisher of the book of Genesis. So everything all leads to Joseph. So then the author of the book of Exodus decides, hey, I like that, but we're going to merge it for my Christ, whose name will be Moses. Do you see what all these groups of pre-Constantine Christians were doing? All these separate books, everybody with a different Christ. Constantine chose Jesus. Didn't choose Samson, Didn't choose Moses, didn't choose Joseph. Joseph Smith knows about this. As he identifies the great and abominable church. But the great and abominable church has already fallen, just as Babylon has already fallen, just as the Egyptians have already fallen. And so, we are given context for the Babylonian captivity period, the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. He's the brother of Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, who came in and conquered, put Zedekiah on the throne to make sure that tribute would be given to Nebuchadnezzar and to Babylon, the capital. That's what they did. They'd go in and say, hey, we're the new crime family in the neighborhood. You will give to us now. And people were concerned that Zedekiah would not be loyal to his brother, and that his brother would come back. Yeah. And so, destruction of Jerusalem. Well, wait a minute. Lehi has a dream in which the sun at noonday gives him a book. And there's a pillar of fire, like light, that dwelt upon a rock. Huh. There's some comparable patterns here, aren't there? And he talks about the destruction of Jerusalem. So the Book of Mormon that Joseph Smith is told by Nephi is about the latter-day burning, as prophesied in the Old Testament. And the book talks about the destruction of the Jews at Jerusalem. And that the highlight of the Book of Mormon that we as missionaries tell our golden, hopefully, investigators is in 3 Nephi chapter 11, verse 8. Jesus comes to the Americas. What does that have to do with the latter days and the burning? We have the Book of Mormon. How did we screw it up? How did we look beyond the mark? Well, Joseph Smith prophesied that we would look beyond the mark in a talk that did not get published by Brigham Young, 19 July 1840. I refer you to the B version rather than the A version. And again, these are in the Joseph Smith papers, guys. Are you afraid to see what the Joseph Smith papers reveals different from what we know? The church has revealed that Joseph Smith's gift and power of God was a rock and a hat. That didn't seem to scare you. Well, okay, yeah, there were many who left because of that. James Huntsman, for example. So, surely there couldn't be anything more damaging to this church by Joseph Smith. Yeah, 19 July 1840. B. Joseph Smith identifies the man who will form the latter-day great and abominable church. He identifies the name of that Christ for that church. In section 115, he prophesies the name of their church. Nelson came out and fulfilled it, by the way. 2020's April General Conference, as he raised an idol god to the Mormons. What name was that god, Mormons? What was the name of the church? Yeah, exactly like Constantine's abomination. History repeats itself. And Joseph Smith prophesies also of that great and abominable church's fall, referring to the parable that Joseph Smith gave in section 101, starting in verse 43. Are you not Mormons? Is Joseph Smith not your founding prophet? Do you no longer have to listen to him? Do you no longer have to believe him? Because we have a living prophet. We don't need to worry about Joseph. His information no longer applies to us. So in the Book of Mormon, chapter 13, verse 5, angel said unto me, behold, the formation of a church which is most abominable, above all others, which slayeth the saints of God, tortures them, binds them down, yokes them with a yoke of iron, bringeth them down into captivity. Well, that's similar to Moses in the Exodus, which the church had conference and only had that Sunday school president briefly talk about it. You were supposed to study it on your own, I guess. I did a whole series for that lesson, and then did the lesson for Sunday on Monday this week. And it came to pass that I beheld this great and abominable church, and I saw the devil, that he was the founder of it. So gold, silver, silks, scarlets, fine twined linen, all manner of precious clothing, harlots. For praise of the world do they destroy the saints of God. You know that place that they were describing, finding the mass graves in Ukraine? Do you know where it was located? 11,000 Mormons were abandoned by Nelson. Those people did not flee. They stayed. Just like the church told us that the saints stayed. Do you know what they did to those bodies? To those human beings? What were the conditions for Jesus Christ coming? What had happened prior to? There was an election fraud, there was civil war, there was a world war, and then there was natural disasters. We haven't even gotten to tornado season here in the United States. strange that we have all these tornadoes causing destruction during the off season. And so, where does he go? Bountiful? There's a temple in Bountiful. That's interesting. I wonder if John in Revelation gives us any actual star dates that the Book of Mormon likewise talks about. The Book of Mormon is not a literal history. You've looked beyond the mark. It's for us, literally us, to warn us of the latter days, the day that shall burn as an oven, the signs in the heavens of the true Christ of Mormons.